Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the DFO DFS show for Thursday, March the 11th. Massive 10-game slate on hand tonight, so I'm not going to waste any time at all because if I waste any time, we're never going to get through this whole thing. So, huge slate tonight. Lots of different places to go. When I was doing the preview work, it looks like there's a lot of different lines you can target tonight, a lot of different lines you can stack to maybe get off some of the chalkier spots. So, super interesting slate. Should be in for a good DFO DFS show. Just a couple quick notes. If you're new, feel free to ask any questions you may have in the chat as I go. I will get to as many of those as I can. Also, we do run a $5 Draftkings contest, 25 people every single night. I will post the link again for that. So join that, fill it up. First 25 guys in, get in. Pretty easy contest to win if, just because there's so few people. So it's a good kind of starter contest as well. If you're kind of new to it. And then if you want to get access to any of the Google Sheets that you'll see here today, you can do that by joining DFO Premium. And then most importantly, before I start, just please smash that like button. If you're watching on YouTube, every like counts. So if you're watching on YouTube, smash that like button and let's get right into it. So the New York Islanders will host New Jersey Devils. Unclear who starts for either team tonight. But I would expect it to be Semyon Varlamov for the Islanders, and I would imagine the Devils will go back to Mackenzie Blackwood tonight. Barry Trotz does not announce a starter, but he did come out and say, even though Sorokin's been better as of late, Semyon's still our number one guy. So I'd imagine you'll see Varlamov for the Isles. Frederik Andersen likely to start for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Connor Hellebuyck goes for the Jets. The Hurricanes will host the Predators, who are now also without Dante Fabro, who was served a 2-game suspension. No Vincent Trocheck for the Carolina Hurricanes. No confirmed starter on either side, but expect to see Reimer versus Rene. But check back in, obviously, before if you want to lock in either one of those goalies. Make sure you check in. Daily face-off, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. When warm-up start, we'll get confirmation from those two. The Blue Jackets host the Panthers again. Elvis Merzlikins returns to the crease for Columbus. Sergei Bobrovsky starts again for the Florida Panthers. Carter Hart continues to struggle for the Flyers, so they'll go to Brian Elliott tonight. Ilya Samsonov makes, I think, just his 5th appearance of the season tonight for the Capitals. Jonas Johansson expected to start for the Sabres, who's the first goalie off the ice at the morning skate today, and Tristan Jarry back in net for the Penguins. For the Bruins, they will go to Yaroslav Halak. Tuukka Rask still not ready. He will not dress tonight. Alexander Georgiev will start for the Rangers. Artemi Panarin was back at practice yesterday, not expected to play this evening, however. For the Red Wings, unclear who starts for them. They have been kind of rotating throughout the season. Grice looked pretty good the other night, so they could go back to Grice. I'm expecting to see Bernier, though. Andrei Vasilevsky most likely between the pipes for the Lightning. Dallas Stars host the Blackhawks again. It'll be Anton Khudobin versus Kevin Lankinen. And then in the nightcap, we're going to see, definitely going to see Jakob Markstrom for the Flames and most likely Jake Allen on the tail end of a back-to-back for the Montreal Canadiens. So here we go. Peter B says it's hard to keep under 5 lineups today. Yeah, it's a busy slate for sure. And Brock, because there are 10 games, can you talk about the D as you talk about the games instead of at the end? Yeah, I'll try. To be honest with you, when it's a 10-game slate, I'm so busy running the site and trying to do all the premium stuff that I haven't even really had a chance to dive in. So I'm not as up to date on all the defenseman plays for tonight. I do have some in mind that I'll try to mention as I go, but mostly going to be talking about the line stacks and the goalies tonight because that's kind of the where I've got most of my information. But I will definitely try to go with some defensemen as I go along today. So we'll start up top, Islanders and Devils. So in this game, the New York Islanders top line continues to play very well. They look like the only real target in this game. The Devils did shake up their line combinations at the tail in the third period against the Capitals and stormed back to tie that game. Ended up losing in overtime, but their lineup looks a little bit better. Especially, I guess, just that top line, Zaka, Hughes, and Palmieri looks a little bit interesting. But the Islanders are a tough assignment for any team. So, it looks like the Islanders top line really the only one really worth targeting. But if we look at it a little bit more, they're basically going to go up against the second line, which is this new Miles Wood line, and then the fourth line, which is the Mike McLeod line. So both pretty good matchups for New Jersey one. I guess the McLeod line isn't a very good matchup. Their numbers are starting to improve without Miles Wood. But the second line looks really, really exploitable, which is why the Islanders top line looks so good tonight. So, if we go to the D score, that is the worst defensive line on the entire slate. So that definitely puts some interest to me for the Islanders if they see, this projected 29% against that second line, then that's pretty much the only line that's even going to see New Jersey 2 other than the Islanders' fourth line. So it really looks like the only line that's really worth targeting in this game. It's really the only bad defensive line in this game. Even though that Zacha Hughes line looks okay on paper, they actually still grade out below average offensively. And in terms of their matchup, they're going to be going up primarily against Brock Nelson and the Casey Cizikas line. Both those lines, pretty good defensive numbers, only 21 scoring chances against for the Nelson line, 23 for the Cizikas line. So both pretty tough assignments. It's going to be tough sledding for the Devils tonight. Last game, it was like they kind of spread their lineup out a little bit, and, certain pieces from each line look like they could have an advantage tonight. It's kind of stacked to the top line, and they're going to be in trouble against the Isles. Tom Wilson chatter. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I definitely have some interest in Semyon Varlamov tonight at 8,200, one of the most expensive goalies on the slate, but he grades out pretty well. Number 2 goalie overall, and comes a couple $100 cheaper than Andrei Vasilevsky. So definitely some interest there. Mackenzie Blackwood all the way, third lowest ranked goaltender tonight. So mostly all in on the Islanders. So last game, though, they did change up their power play units. I don't know 100% if it's going to stick. Ryan Pulock barely saw power play usage, which to me seems wild. But Noah Dobson was back on that top unit. So, if you're playing Isles 1 and you want to put Dobson in there, I think he's only 3,600 if I'm not mistaken, and kind of just, he's 3,600, and hope that this sticks, then I think that's the route you should go. I wouldn't pay up for Pulock and hope. I think you're better off to just throw Dobson at that point and hope that this is what sticks tonight. Outside of that, no real interest in these defensemen, because I want to correlate with Islanders 1, and it looks like Dobson is going to be the way to do that tonight, most likely. So Dobson at 3,600 looks appealing. All right, so Maple Leafs and the Jets. So the other night, I kind of said, let's fade the Leafs top line, and it almost worked. I mean, Matthews scored kind of a fluky goal, and then at the end of the game, he scored again, which kind of just blew it all up. He was 60% owned in cash and 35% owned in GPP, and it kind of just ruined everything. It almost works, though. It doesn't look quite as appealing tonight. I just want to see exactly how that game worked out. So the Tavares line had a massive game the other night, 85% Corsi 4, and then the Matthews line dominated as well. Obviously, Connor Hellebuyck just kind of stood on his head. So if something like this happens again, if it turns into a similar style game, then obviously both of the Maple Leafs top 2 lines are in play tonight. From a numbers perspective, they still don't look great. The Jets, outside of that game, have been pretty good defensively as of late. But Toronto 2 still grades out really, really well. Toronto 1 grades out slightly behind them. In terms of the matchup, Toronto 1 is going to basically, actually, it looks like both lines are basically going to go head-to-head with Mark Scheifele, and then Toronto 1 will see a little bit more of the bottom 6, where Toronto 2 will still see a little bit more of the Pierre-Luc Dubois line, but most of Pierre-Luc Dubois' minutes is going to come against that Pierre Engvall, Zach Hyman line. I mentioned that this last time these two teams played, that Winnipeg 1 and 2, their numbers were probably a little bit skewed due to a smaller sample size. They seem to be coming back down to earth a little bit more, and that's why they don't grade quite as high as they did the other night, which makes perfect sense. So Toronto 1, 33 scoring chances for. As I mentioned, their numbers still aren't that amazing at 5v5 with Joe Thornton. They did bump Zach Hyman up to that top line last game, but he was back on the third line in practice yesterday, so I'd expect it to be Jumbo Joe to start. And their numbers just aren't that spectacular. Obviously, pretty decent matchup against the Scheifele line, who is now giving up 25 scoring chances against, 11 high danger. So Maple Leafs 1 looks still firmly in play, because obviously, even if their numbers aren't that great, Matthews only needs a couple shots and he can score 2 goals. So obviously, they're going to be super popular again tonight. Matthews, I think, is 9,200, so it is going to be a little bit more difficult to 9,100, excuse me. Marner 7,800, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult to squeeze them in there. As I mentioned, Toronto 2 is going to see a lot of the Scheifele line, and they're also going to see a lot of the Dubois line. Both those lines giving up almost identical numbers defensively, 26 and 25 scoring chances against. The Tavares line's offensive numbers are actually slightly better than the Matthews line, at least at 5v5. So, if you don't want to pay all the way up, 9,100 for Matthews and 7,800 for Marner, I think Tavares at 6,200 and Nylander at 5,600, and probably 1/3 of the ownership is a really strong pivot. It looked like they had a huge game the other night. If they continue to dominate tonight, they can have a huge night at half the ownership and basically half the price. So most people that know NHL loves Isles 1. Yeah, they are outstanding tonight. I'm fading Leafs could be a bad move, but only 4 lineups, so don't have room for them. And yeah, it's going to be tough. Fading the Leafs is kind of a scary proposition on any night, but tonight there are so many spots that hopefully those other spots go off as well, and then at the very least can match the Leafs output at a much cheaper price. So from a Winnipeg perspective, Winnipeg 1 still looks pretty solid. That's Stastny, Scheifele, and Wheeler. They all correlate on the top power play unit. As I mentioned, they're basically going to go head-to-head with Matthews and Tavares all night, so it is kind of a scary proposition. Matthews' line is obviously terrific defensively because they dominate puck possession, but the Tavares line pretty good defensively as well. So it just doesn't look that great for the Jets. They did obviously steal one the other night, but it doesn't look like they're going to be able to really sustain any offensive zone pressure throughout the night. It's going to be difficult for Winnipeg 1 or 2 to really get anything going. Winnipeg 2, their numbers are solid. They're going to see a little bit more of that third line of the Maple Leafs, which is a little bit more exploitable than the top 2 lines. So if you're going to play Winnipeg, you want to kind of pivot off of the Leafs completely and go the other way and play Winnipeg. I think Winnipeg 2 is probably the better option. I know they don't grade out quite as well, but 6,800 for Kyle Connor, 4,200 for Pierre-Luc Dubois, 7,100 still expensive for Ehlers, but it looks like the matchup's a little bit better going up against Engvall and Hyman all night than going up against Matthews all night. So that's what I'll say about that game. For the next game, so we've got the Hurricanes Predators. So as I mentioned, Vincent Trocheck not in the lineup for the Hurricanes. So this is what they're going to do. Really, really interesting looking lineup. Basically, Aho plays for Trocheck as they move Niederreiter and Necas up to the top line. The third line remains the same, and then Aho's old line mates, Brock McGinn and Warren Foegele, drop down to flank Jordan Martinook, and then Morgan Geekie on the fourth line. So very interesting lines. Finally, Sebastian Aho gets some line mates. Obviously, Niederreiter and Necas have been outstanding with Trocheck all season long. There's no reason not to think that Sebastian Aho can't do what Vincent Trocheck's been doing throughout the course of the season. He is pretty familiar with playing with Nino Niederreiter. They've had really, really good numbers together. Nino Niederreiter, Sebastian Aho, and Tuva Teravainen were aligned quite a bit last year. These numbers are actually without Tuva Teravainen at all. So as you can see, really, really solid numbers across the board for Sebastian Aho and Nino Niederreiter. So Necas should be able to slide in there and continue to do what he's been doing on that second line all season long. So they look outstanding tonight in terms of a full stack. In terms of their matchup, they're basically going to be going head-to-head with the second line of the Predators, which, as you know, still no Matt Duchene. So Rem Pitlick, who's playing, I believe, in his third career NHL game, is flanked by Mikael Granlund and Kalle Järnkrok. So far, has not been very pretty for them defensively, as you can see here, giving up 32 scoring chances against 13 high danger. So really, really looks like a great spot for Carolina 1. In terms of overall price, they're not all that expensive. You can full stack them for just $16,500. Necas still under $5,000, which is crazy for the season that he's had. So Carolina 1 looks like the top play in this game. They look outstanding. One of my favorite plays on the entire slate tonight. Nashville 1 still looks pretty solid. Johansson just $3,400, Forsberg $7,500, and Arvidsson just $7,600. In terms of their matchup, they're basically going to go head-to-head with the Jordan Staal line all night long. The Staal line, obviously has some shutdown capabilities. They have not been that great in that role. So when Svechnikov is on the wing, when they pair him up with like Warren Foegele and Brock McGinn, Jesper Fast, some more defensive two-way forwards, their numbers improve. But with Svechnikov, they seem to play a little bit more of an up-tempo game, which you might expect. As he's obviously a dynamic offensive talent. So their defensive numbers aren't great. So that definitely gives Nashville 1 a chance to succeed tonight. Problem for me is their blue line. Only Matthias Ekholm is like basically the only legit NHL defenseman on this roster right now. So it's going to be tough sledding for them. It's going to be tough for them to get out of their own zone with this group of defensemen. And I think that's just going to limit the upside for the Predators top line or any of these Predators lines. I think it's going to be tough sledding for them without question. So that being said, that makes me like Carolina even more tonight. So you got to love the Hurricanes. They should absolutely crush this blue line. If you are looking for a deep punt, Jeremy Davies stepped right into the lineup. I think he played 14 minutes the other night, and he is centering their top power play unit at minimum price. He had 3 shots in 14 minutes the other night. He is going to center that quarterback that top power play unit. So as a deep punt, he's fine, but stacking any of these lines look risky. somebody said MAR.11 has been really good. He has been good. He's still just 3,400. But like I said, the usage still is pretty limited. And the fact that they're going to probably be hemmed in most of the night tonight, it's tough to really see the Predators getting anything done offensively tonight. I do like MAR.11 a lot. I'd like to see him back in the top 6 again. And there will be nights where I will recommend him, but tonight does not look like that night. So the Blue Jackets, they will go with another hilarious looking lineup. They traded Pierre-Luc Dubois, and as I mentioned, they have absolutely no centers on the roster. Boone Jenner, top line center. Riley Nash, second line center. Jack Roslovich, third line center. It's a nightmare. They have no center depth whatsoever. Patrick Laine has been struggling after a pretty hot start. Roslovich has obviously cooled right off. Laine said today he's basically got zero confidence. So not really what you want to hear. I don't have any interest in playing the Blue Jackets. I haven't pretty much all season long. Even when they were hot, their numbers weren't great. The top line looks decent in terms of offensive production, but they're still only slightly above average. And then they're going to go head-to-head with the Barkov line the entire night. So no interest in Cam Atkinson or Jenner or Foligno because they're going to probably get demolished by the Barkov line tonight. So in terms of targeting this game, it looks like obviously the Barkov line is the one to go to. Marchment still on the wing at 3,100. Verhaeghe at 4,400 look really, really good. That Jenner line, pretty decent offensive numbers, so defensive numbers, still giving up a healthy amount of high danger chances. Losing the puck position battle. So this again just looks like another night where Florida 1 can have a good night. They were pretty solid the other night. Barkov obviously got robbed by Korpisalo. He has, he scores that goal. Much better night for him. As I've mentioned on previous shows, no interest in the depth pieces of the Panthers because they don't do much at 5v5. Obviously, I continue to get burned by Hornqvist and Huberdeau when they score on the power play, but I'm just going to stick with it because the second I target them, they're going to throw up the donut that you would expect. So, I just, the power play reduction, fine. I can live getting burned by that, but they're not doing enough at 5v5 to really warrant playing them. With that being said, though, they do have a pretty decent matchup tonight going up against the second. Actually, no, they've got the terrible matchup. It's the third line of the Panthers. Who's going to see the bottom 6 of the Blue Jackets? That looks okay. Bottom 6 of the Blue Jackets is not very good, but it's hard to really. I mean, if you want to play Frankie Vetrano, he's a little inflated at 4,400 from his time on the top line. If you really are looking for a punt, maybe Owen Tippett at minimum price. Shoots the puck quite a bit. Looks like he's got a pretty decent matchup with the Blue Jackets bottom 6. But the second line of the Panthers, I'm going to continue to fade altogether. So yeah, you got to love Florida 1 tonight. You got to love Florida 1 pretty much every single night. The one thing I keep forgetting to go to because I'm trying to rush through these games is the power play report. First couple games I'll cover really quick. Islanders, modest power play advantage. The Devils have a terrible penalty kill. So, it really just looks like a spot where you would want to target the Islanders even more. Top line fully correlates on the top power play unit. So that's great. For whatever reason, this color correlation is backwards, but so kind of ignore PK score. Maple Leafs still have a pretty good advantage. Obviously a terrific power play. Jets have a pretty porous penalty kill, but the Jets are pretty disciplined, only 2.52 penalties per game. Carolina, massive power play advantage tonight. So that just, makes you want to play them even more. The Blue Jackets power play is a joke. The Panthers penalty kill is solid. So, another reason not to play the Blue Jackets. Panthers, pretty good on the power play, but the Blue Jackets are pretty good on the kill. So, again, another reason to kind of fade Florida 2, but still want to play Barkov because they have such a huge advantage at 5v5. So, yeah, I like Bobrovsky a little bit tonight, too. He grades out really well. Merzlikins grades out well as well, mostly inflated by his expected shot volume tonight. Obviously, that's going to be pretty high. So if you're looking for a cheap goalie, Merzlikins looks pretty solid if this is a relatively low-scoring game. Vegas doesn't mind the Blue Jackets tonight. I don't know why. Merzlikins has been really solid this year. Should see a ton of shots. But overall, I prefer Bobrovsky at $400 more expensive. Preds 1 is projected over 15%. Okay. Have fun. Do what you want. I don't know why you would ever I don't know who's coming up with this ownership, but that's a nightmare. Anyways, moving on, we've got the Flyers and Capitals. I was kind of threw me off there. Okay, so Flyer, this game looks pretty trash from a DFS perspective. A lot of overpriced pieces and probably a pretty low event matchup. Philadelphia 1 grades out very, as the best option in this game, but it's slightly above average. They're obviously red hot, so their price is super inflated, but overall, not a great matchup. It doesn't look like. They're going to go head-to-head with the Ovechkin line. The Ovechkin line has actually been pretty decent in their own end. 27 scoring chances against per 60, so they're not great. It's a half-decent matchup, all things considered. So Philly 1 looks okay. But it's tough. It's going to be tough to pay that price. Obviously, 20,800 to full stack them. It's probably not worth it. Their matchup's okay, but there's much better matchups at that same price point on this slate. So I'm not going to probably talk too much about this game. I just don't like it. For the Ovechkin people out there, I mean, they're okay at 5v5, not great, but it's a terrible matchup with Sean Couturier. They're going to go head-to-head with Couturier all night long. Obviously, with Ovechkin, there's always the potential for the power play production. They have a negative power play score. Their power play hasn't been very good this year. What's it called? So their power play hasn't been very good this year. The Flyers' penalty kill has been solid. So it doesn't look great for the Capitals tonight. So I'm assuming Ovechkin will probably carry pretty big ownership because the Flyers just had a tough time with the Sabres. But Carter Hart played terrible. So, I mean, if it ends up being a similar game like that, then fine, whatever. I'll get burned by it. But I'm not going to target this game. I'm not going to pay 8,100 for Ovechkin going up, most of his night against Sean Couturier, and I'm not going to pay 20,000 for the Flyers top line right now, even though they're hot, because I would much rather pay same price for Pittsburgh 1. So Pittsburgh 1, Gensel, Crosby, Rust, obviously has been outstanding all season long. Their matchup, they're going to see basically the top line, which is Dylan Cousins and Taylor Hall, and then the fourth line of the Sabres, which is the worst line in all of hockey. So obviously just looks like an outstanding matchup for the Penguins tonight. Dylan Cousins, he played his first game at center the other night against Sean Couturier. Second game is coming against Sidney Crosby. So tough start at center for him. But he got beat up pretty bad, as you might imagine, against Couturier. Obviously, Hall had a decent night. Reinhardt, they got some power play production. But all in all, they got dominated at 5v5 for the most part. So I would expect much of the same tonight with Sidney Crosby. Just outstanding numbers across the board, 2.62 expected goals for, 29 scoring chances, almost 30, 14 high danger. Really, really good numbers. That Cousins line, 26 scoring chances, 12 high danger. The fourth line, absolute tire fire defensively when Kyle Okposo was there. So it looks like an absolute smash spot for the Penguins. I wouldn't look anywhere else in their lineup other than that top line. The second line, Malkin struggled pretty much all season when Brian Rust is not on his wing. Obviously, Kasperi Kapanen's hot right now, but I wouldn't chase that because it's just, a very limited production at 5v5 or very limited chances at 5v5. So it doesn't look great. From the Sabres side of things, they just don't do anything at 5v5. All things considered, most nights the Penguins are pretty solid defensively. They're a well-coached team. So I wouldn't imagine, a similar game to the other night where the Sabres kind of got the jump on the Flyers. I would expect a little bit, maybe of a lower scoring game, but probably all of the production is coming from Pittsburgh 1 in this game. They just look like they're in an absolute smash spot. Obviously, if you can fit Letang with him, go for it. He's been red hot. 6,400, though, it's not going to be easy to do. Some of their other defensemen, they've got a couple of other cheap defensemen, maybe John Marino, maybe Marcus Pettersson. They're like 25 and 2,700 if you want to try to correlate. They don't play a whole lot. With the top line, it's normally Letang and whoever's paired with Letang, which tonight would be Brian Dumoulin, who's 3,200. So maybe he's your best bet to pair with them as a cheap defenseman. But all in all, just stack that first line and then maybe correlate with your other line or do whatever else you want to do. Jacob Bryson still seems nice. If you want to. Obviously kind of had just a fluky goal, but he's been blocking a couple shots every single game. So he looks fine at 2,500. I don't, if you want to punt a Sabres defenseman, yeah, Jacob Bryson looks fine. Colin Miller is expected to draw back in the lineup tonight. But I'm pretty sure, yeah, Bryson is still supposed to be in the lineup with Montour. So that's all good. Moving on. So we've got the Bruins and the Rangers. So the Bruins top line, unsurprisingly, grades out the best in this game. 23,800 full stack them. They're the only lineup with a positive grade. Obviously, New York 2 has been red hot as of late. The prices come up a bit. Kreider 5,500, Strome 5,200. I think that their production has been relatively, just kind of fluky. They've been solid, but offensively, slightly above average. These numbers don't pop off the board. Obviously, 13 high danger chances is impressive. That's what happens when you have Chris Kreider crashing the net all day, I guess. But The Rangers just look really, really bad on paper right now without Panarin at 5v5. They're struggling. They're okay defensively, but it still looks like a spot where the Bruins top line can smash. 31 scoring chances, 12 high danger. They're obviously outstanding. Bruins top line, mostly going to see the Mika's advantage ad line, which, as I've mentioned, has struggled more than anybody this season. So that looks like a good spot for Boston 1 tonight. So obviously there's just tons of places you can go tonight. If you want to fade Toronto, I'm assuming they'll be the most popular. You can go to Boston 1, you can go to Pittsburgh 1, and, they'll carry probably a little bit less ownership, a little bit, maybe not crazy less ownership. Like, who knows? I mean, somebody just said that Nashville 1's going to be 15%. So how am I supposed to know what the ownership is going to be? Like, I try to figure it out, but I really have no idea. So, it looks like a good spot, obviously, for Boston 1. The Rangers have struggled. Alexander Georgiev, not a good goalie. So Boston 1, one of my favorites tonight, because I don't think Zibanejad's going to be able to handle them. Nothing really else to talk about in this game. Like, I don't like the rest of Boston's lineup is not doing anything. They all grade out below average offensively. And then the bottom 6 of the Rangers, while they don't do anything offensively, they don't give up a whole lot either. So just no real interest past Boston 1. And we got to just keep things rolling here. So Detroit and Tampa. So obviously we were all over Tampa the other night. It didn't really go great. The Red Wings did pretty well. So speaking off the top of my head, the Red Wings seem to struggle in the second game of these sets. You just look back to when they played Chicago, played very well against Chicago the first game, second game they lose 7-2. So if, Tampa Bay didn't carry a lot of ownership the other night, which I was pretty surprised by, and then now with all these other big pieces on the slate, I don't think they're going to carry very much ownership tonight. And to me, it seems like a spot that people will be burned by them, won't go back to them, and I'm going to definitely go back. I pulled a bit of a bigger sample for Detroit's fourth line, and their defensive numbers improved a little bit, actually quite a bit. They weren't quite as bad, so it doesn't look like it's as good of a matchup as it was the other night, as it looked. So basically what's going to happen is Braden Point's going to go head-to-head with that Glendening line. So that Glendening line did a pretty good job the other night. I think they actually won the possession battle. The point line's offense numbers aren't outstanding anyway, the way that at least this lineup is constructed. So I would probably take, I'm probably not going to play Tampa 1, but I do like Tampa 2. Their numbers are better. They are averaging 35 scoring chances, 4 per 60, which is outrageous. And they are going to see the first and second line of the Red Wings. So those lines, not very good. Defensively, they're okay. They're basically, similar to the fourth line, but, not quite as good. So it looks like a little bit of a better matchup for the Stamkos line. The one thing I will say is I would watch out for the Lightning's lines and warm-ups. I have a funny feeling that they might reunite that top line. If that's the case, then just Glendening can't stop Stamkos and Point. If they're broken up, maybe he can stop Point and Cirelli. But if they load up that top line, I think that they will just steamroll the Red Wings. To me, sometimes these games, these contenders go in and take a team lightly, and then Detroit, takes them and plays them tough. And I don't think that the Lightning are going to take them lightly tonight. I think they're going to probably come in and just smash them. So if you are going to play the Lightning, even if you want to play them modestly, I think that second line is the way to go. They grade out the second best. Detroit 1 actually grades out the best in this game, but I can't do that with Vasilevsky in that even after a bit of a stinker. But Yanni Gourde looks still super attractively priced at 4,700. Stamkos 7,700. He's one of the cheaper studs on the entire slate. Bit of a letdown the other night, but that's where I would probably go tonight. If we want to talk about Detroit 1 a little bit, obviously their price is super good at 13,600 full stack them. They're going to basically see just the entire top or bottom 9. Everybody except for the Braden Point line. For the Lightning, the way the lineup's currently constructed, they're not that great defensively, which is why we might have seen some struggles the other night, and which is why I would expect, I kind of expect them to change things up. They had a really good thing going. I don't know why they're changing things up right now, but I'm not the head coach. And I didn't win a Stanley Cup last year, so I'm not going to question anything that they do. But obviously they're a much better team when Coleman's playing with Gourde and Goodrow. That third line's outrageous. The first line, when you stack them all up, is super good. Second line struggles a little bit, so maybe that's what they're trying to get Cirelli going a little bit. I don't know. But yeah, I'm assuming none of you guys want to play the Red Wings, so I'm going to stop talking about them. Dallas obviously smashed the other night. We did talk about their second line quite a bit. Rupe Hintz was a game time decision. He played. He was in the game. He was in the game day skate today. It looks like he's going to play. Second line still looks really attractive. I would imagine though that they'll probably carry decent ownership tonight. I think people will flock back to them. because they're super cheap. They're only 10,500 full stack. They were in the winning lineup the other night. Robertson's obviously a pretty good player. He's a pretty good prospect. He's not going to get 4 assists again tonight, though. So, I would try to look elsewhere if I'm going to try to find some value stacks tonight. But they do still look solid, slightly above average. In terms of their matchup, we'll start with them because I'm sure you guys are probably excited about them. No hard match situation really in this game at all. The only thing that we will see is basically the Stars' fourth line will go head-to-head with Patrick Kane, and then that'll leave the other 3 Stars lines to go against the second, third, and fourth line of Blackhawks. So Dallas 1, grades out solid. They're pretty good. Dallas 2 actually carries the better offensive numbers right now, if only slightly. The Blackhawks bottom 6 is pretty decent defensively outside of their fourth line. So, I think Dallas 1 and 2 are both in play. In terms of the power play report, not a lot of love for them there. So the one thing that Dallas's power play is going for them is they seem to just draw a shitload of penalties every single night. Maybe you build a little bit of a Dallas stack with some power play correlation. I think I'd be fine with that. They did change up their power play units a little bit. They did not move John Klingberg back up to that top unit right away. Miro Heiskanen had some success while he was away. So they kept that the same. So Pavelski, Ben, Gurianov all together, Hintz, Heiskanen on the top power play. So to me, my preferred option would be to full stack the top line still, as opposed to chasing that second line game. Ben, Pavelski, Gurianov all on the top power play unit together. Miro Heiskanen, he's pretty expensive right now. He's gotten hot. His shot volume has been relatively limited throughout the season. He is shooting a little bit more right now, but it's a pretty penny to pay for defenseman, with that kind of production. He's a really good real life defenseman, not so much in fantasy, but Dallas 1 still very reasonably priced, 16,700. So I would rather pay that than the 10,000 at the higher ownership, most likely with Dallas 2. I think a lot of people will chase that game because there isn't a whole lot of really good value to go with these top lines tonight. So on the other side, as you guys know, I am not the biggest Chicago 1 fan. Head to head with Dallas 4 will give us a good idea of what they're going to be able to accomplish tonight. Again, they grade out okay, offensively slightly above average, not great. But Dallas 4 is not that great of a shutdown line. They're not as good as when Radek Faksa plays with them, but obviously they're trying to get a little more offensively out of Faksa. So with Dickinson in the middle, they're not quite as good. So it looks like an okay matchup for Chicago 1, but Dallas pretty much sucks the life out of any game. And really limits the opposition. So again, with so many good options on the slate, I don't have any interest in paying $7,900 for DeBrincat or $8,300 for Kane. I just won't go there because there's so many other spots that just look so much better than Chicago. Who's everyone's favorite goalie? I keep getting Bobrovsky. Yeah, Bobrovsky's fine. Again, I'll go back to the goalies here. In this game, Anton Khudobin grades out pretty well. 5th best goaltender on the slate. But yeah, if you keep coming up with Bobrovsky, he looks fine at 7,700. 4th best goalie. A lot of decent middling priced goalies tonight. Basically, to me, I think you kind of just play Bobrovsky or you pay up for one of these top goalies. That's probably what I'm going to do. If you have to pay down, I don't hate Hellebuck because you should see a ton of action. And obviously he can have those Vezina type nights like he had the other night. And even last night with Demko, he was so good at, for the majority of that game and then kind of fell apart, halfway through. But, you get those 40 save performances, you're still fine. And I think Hellebuck can turn something like that in tonight, and you get tons of leverage on the field because everyone's going to play the Maple Leafs. So we still got one game to talk about, though, do I not? Yeah. Flames and Canadians. So the Canadians debuted their new lines last night. They looked outstanding. They had just an outrageous night. Dominated puck possession. Probably going to happen again. Montreal 2, 1, and 3 all grade out, basically the same. Calgary 3 obviously looks okay because their underlying numbers are solid. But in terms of the matchup tonight, it's basically going to be the Lindholm line against the Suzuki line, the Monahan line against the Jesperi Kotkaniemi line, then the backline line against the Deneau line. So those two are just going to just do nothing against each other. There'll be no offense in a Deneau backline duo. That's going to be hilarious. But obviously outstanding numbers across the board for Montreal 1 and 2. So Montreal 1 will go head to head with Calgary 1, and then Montreal 2 will go head to head with Calgary 2. So on paper, it looks like both pretty good matchups. I would say that the Montreal 2 matchup is a little bit better. They had a pretty good night last night. We did see a nice offensive spark out of Kotkaniemi, which is great. Hopefully that continues. So I do like Kotkaniemi as a cheap play at 3,300. It's fully obviously super expensive still at 7,300. So it just kind of is a matter of preference and a matter of how much money you've got. If you want a full stack, the top line, they are almost $3,000 cheaper than the second line. So it's just basically a matter of pricing for you and which one you prefer, but both are firmly in play and look to have about the same advantage. Play the whole Tampa Bay power play one line. Yeah, I think that's definitely an option. It's definitely something I'm going to do because I just think that they're going to just run all over the Red Wings tonight. And if they don't again and they burn me, then fine. If the Red Wings want to keep burning me, then whatever. That's one team I'll accept getting burned by. But yeah, Killorn, Point, Stamkos, Hedman, Palat, super good power play unit. They look really good in terms of the power play report for these last couple games. So Tampa Bay doesn't actually grade out that great offensively on the power play because the Red Wings have a decent penalty kill, but so hard to cover the Lightning on the power play. Montreal grades out pretty poorly on the power play, just not a great power play altogether. Pretty solid penalty kill for the Flames. And then, the Dallas-Chicago game, not much going on there. One game I did kind of gloss over in terms of the power play was Boston. Really good power play unit, and the Rangers not a very good kill. So another reason why you should like Boston 1 tonight. So yeah, to talk about goalies here a little bit, Vasilevsky, Varlamov look outstanding. Obviously make sure Varlamov is starting. Merzlikins, he grades out high because of his shot volume. Bobrovsky, Hudobin look really, really solid. Outside of them, though, it does get dicey in the middle. I do like Yaroslav Halak's, chance to win tonight, but he's probably not going to see the shot volume that these other guys are. But I do like him quite a bit. These cheap guys, it's going to be tough. Like Pecorine is going to struggle big time. Samsonov is the one that's interesting me at 7,300. I don't think the Flyers are playing that great of hockey right now, so there's definitely an opportunity for Samsonov to win. He just looked really good since returning. So Samsonov at the towards the bottom is probably my favorite. I do have a little bit of interest in Jake Allen too. The one thing that is worth mentioning is that this is the first game that Sutter's going to be back behind the bench for the Flames. So this matchup is solely based on what they've done in the past. With Sutter behind the bench now, who knows what he does, right? It could be completely different and the matchup could change entirely. So that is one thing worth keeping mind on here tonight. But what else am I supposed to do? So just kind of, I would assume he's basically stuck with the same line. So why wouldn't he stick with the same matchups? I would imagine. It hasn't worked to this point. They're not very good. But yeah, so overall, that's pretty much it. I will try to find some defensemen here for you as we go out, but that's a look at what it looks like from top to bottom. Pittsburgh 1 on top, Florida 1 second, Islanders 1 third, Carolina 1 fourth. Predators 1 does look solid, so maybe that's why they're going to carry 15% ownership. But if they are going to see ownership, then no, thank you. Yeah, a little bit surprised at how low Toronto is, but obviously, they're just so elite that they don't need to be in the best matchup to have a huge night. So, yeah. So here we go. That's what we got here. I'll take a look at some defensemen here as we go. One thing I do want to mention is that we have 15 spots left in our Draftkings contest tonight. So here it is, Draftkings contest for $5. Join now. Fill it up, because if it doesn't fill up, it doesn't run. Yeah, Rangers are fifth or sixth in the league on the PK, FYI. Yeah, percentage is one thing, and then the actual underlying numbers is what we go by. So that's, they might have, decent percentage-wise, maybe it's good goaltending or what have you, but overall, they're not great. They grade out at about average. So yeah, that fifth or sixth, percent is probably a little bit inflated. They're not terrible on the PK, but they're not great. And then the Bruins obviously have an outstanding power play, so that's kind of what boosts them up. So yeah, Forsling is definitely my favorite defenseman tonight. People are finally starting to catch on to my boy Gustav Forsling. 2,900 still, though. The only people not catching on is DraftKings because his price is still super low. So he's outstanding. He's for sure my favorite. Davies looks fine at 2,500 if you want to punt. You can basically punt the entire Predators blue line at this point. So yeah, they're probably among my two favorites. Matt Grzelcyk still looks really solidly priced at 4,100. There is appeal there. Plays a ton of minutes. He's on the top power play unit. If you don't want to go with Forsling, Weegar, I mentioned the other night, he had a really good night, 2 assists, 2 blocked shots, 12 DraftKings points. He's playing huge minutes with Ekblad. He looks fine at 3,700. I mentioned Dobson off the top at 3,600 if you're playing the Islanders 1. I still like Vakanainen. Vakinen? I can never pronounce this guy's name. I still like him, 3,200. Minutes aren't quite as high as they were a couple games ago. Still only seen 14, but he seems to just be heavily involved whenever he's on the ice. Only 3,200. Can't pronounce his name. I'll figure it out one day. Vatin's price is still really solid at 3,000. He's been really involved as well. I don't like the Devils tonight, but if you're looking to one-off a defenseman, you could do worse than that. But all in all, Forsling's the guy. Always has been, always will be. I'm trying to find somebody else here. I really do need to build this D tool because the goalies are super easy to identify now. Top stacks are easy to identify. I got to build something that tells me which defenseman to play every night. Tucker Poolman, I think, is okay too at 2,600. He plays, massive minutes. They're probably going to be hemmed in most of the night by the Maple Leafs, so he should have an abundance of opportunities to block shots tonight. So he's okay too, but still, I'd rather play Forsling. I think Davies is fine. Like, how often do you get a top power play unit defenseman at 2,500? Obviously, the Predators aren't great in the power play, and the Canes have a really good kill, so they probably won't score any power play goals. But how many shots do you need out of a guy who's 2,500, right? So. But that's pretty much going to do it today for the DFS show. I'm going to try to do a show tomorrow. I don't know for sure. I know I have to record a podcast. It is Friday, but there's not that many games, so maybe I'll come on early, maybe really early. I'm not sure. But if you are interested, obviously just keep an eye out on Twitter. I'll tweet out the link. I always schedule the show kind of earlier in the day. So if you just subscribe, check back to the YouTube channel, see what time it's scheduled for, then tune back in later in the day. But I will also tweet it out as well. And then if you want to join DFO Premium, just go to dailyfaceoff.com under Optimizer and click Go Premium. You can do that for as little as $9.99 for a week, $19.99 for the month. And you get access to all of these sheets much earlier in the day. You can study, you can go through all the matchups with a fine-tooth comb and find out who you want to play. Much earlier in the day, start building lineups way earlier in the day. And then you also get access to our Discord channel, which we're talking hockey in there all day long. Everybody kind of, we've got some cash game players in there, which I'm not, who help, each other build cash lineups and try to figure out who the best targets are there. So, just a whole lot going on DFO Premium. So it would be great if you guys would join us. And if you don't want to do that and you want to keep getting it for free, just please at least just smash that like button for me. Because, that goes a long way for us. So anyways, thank you guys again so much for tuning into the DFO DFS show. I'm Brock Seguin. We'll see you guys back here most likely tomorrow. If not, see you Monday.